So welcome everybody. So this is the eighth seminar, and today we have Nishaant Choksi from Humanities and Social Science, and he's going to talk about language and scripts of India. Nishaant, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming. I want to give I hope the presentation is informative and I don't really want to go too long, so maybe we can have some interaction after because maybe some people might have questions or comments because I'm going to cover a really broad range of topics. So. Okay, so first, just as a overview, how many languages does India have? If we're talking about the entire country, even that question is pretty difficult to answer. As far as official languages, there are 22, so 22 national languages. And according to Ethnologue, which is the sort of linguistic society, the Summer Institute of Linguistics, which is a global linguistic organization, their survey, India has 461 languages. Recently, there was a survey done by different grassroots organizations throughout the country, the People's Linguistic Survey of India, and they found that there are 781 languages. So almost double. So the question is still, we still really don't have an exact figure on that. But as far as official figures go, India has the fourth highest number of languages spoken in the world. So that's 6.81% of the world's languages. So India has quite a lot of languages, but there are places in the world that have more. The one that has the highest number of languages is Papua New Guinea, a small island in the Pacific, which has hardly the population of nearly as much as India, but still has more languages. So there are more linguistically diverse places in the world, but India is definitely one of the most. So linguists generally group languages into language families. They do this through historical reconstruction, basically comparing the words and sounds of different languages together, and they build sort of historical connections. And so India has four major language families within the the borders. So the biggest one is Indo-European, of which most of the languages are in the Indo-Aryan branch. Dravidian, Austro-Asiatic, which is most in the Munda branch, and Tibeto-Burman. These are the four big language families. And then there are other languages that don't fit into any of these language families, like, of course, Andamanese in the Andaman Islands is a very old language, and it's not related to any of these. Nihali is a small language, tribal language that's not related to this. And there are some languages in the Thai language family in Assam and Northeast India. These are related to Thai from Thailand, but they're very small in number. So the four major language families are the ones above there. So just to show you the spread of the different languages and the language families, so the biggest language family is the Indo-Aryan from the Indo-European family. And Indo-European is one of the biggest language families in the world, actually. It stretches all the way from India, all to Russia, and to Europe. And so we are speaking right now an Indo-European language, English. In India, most of the Indo-European languages, as you can see, are concentrated in the north, pretty much from sort of upper Deccan area up to, as you can see, Pakistan, and over to the east towards Bengal, Bangladesh. In the south, you don't see much Indo-European family until you get to Sri Lanka. Sinhala is Indo-Aryan language. So that's an interesting story there. These are just some examples of the Indo-Aryan languages. or Indo-European languages, because I've included English here as ones of India. So, the major ones, of course, the major languages of northern India, Hindi, Bangla, the top two most spoken languages in India. Punjabi, Marathi, Urdu, Gujarati, all the big ones. And then you have some tribal languages that are Indo-Aryan, like Bhili, Khandeshi, small languages like Landa, spoken in Punjab, or Shinna in Jammu Kashmir, Dogri in Jammu, and Nepali, of course. So these are all it's a big spread of Indo-European languages. The Dravidian languages are languages that are spoken mostly, as you can see, in the south of India. In the north there, you have very low percentage of Dravidian languages until you get to the central area. This is the tribal belt of India. This is the areas in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh. So you do have a number of Dravidian languages, and Orissa. So you have a number of Dravidian languages there, small Dravidian languages that are tribal languages. And pretty much most of the Dravidian languages outside South India are tribal languages. And then you can see the big concentration in the south, and then the northern part of Sri Lanka, of course, is Tamil speaking also. So these are the examples of some of the Dravidian languages. So Tamil, of course, is one of the biggest. Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, these are the big ones. There's the tribal languages in the south, many of them, Toda, Kodagu, Irula, Muduga. These are South Indian tribal languages or minority languages, small languages. And then you have a lot of these Central Indian tribal languages, which also fall under the Dravidian. Kuruk, Malto, spoken in Jharkhand, Kolami, Parji, Gadaba, or it's also known as Kui in Orissa. Tulu, of course, is spoken in South India. Brahui is an interesting language. That one is spoken in Pakistan. So you have one Dravidian language spoken in Pakistan, in Balochistan area. How that got there or how that arose is, a historical question. Interesting one. Okay. So these are the Austro-Asiatic languages or the Munda languages. So Austro-Asiatic is a language family that is spread out from the westernmost part of Austro-Asiatic is in this Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh border. And then it goes to the east, and then it goes into China, Southeast Asia, sort of the smaller languages of Myanmar, and Cambodian is the major one, Khmer, Cambodian language, Vietnamese language. These are all Austro-Asiatic languages. In India, pretty much all the Austro-Asiatic or Munda languages are tribal languages spoken by the tribal communities. So again, Jharkhand, Orissa, and up into Bihar, West Bengal, tribal areas. This is the main area of the Austro-Asiatic language family. And then, as you can see, that area in the tribal area on the Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh border there. So the biggest tribal language, Austro-Asiatic language is Santali. It is spoken in Assam, Bihar, Orissa, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Bangladesh, Nepal. Then comes Mundari Ho, Bhumij, Birhor. These are all spoken in Jharkhand area. Asur, again Jharkhand. Korwa and Korku are spoken on the Maharashtra side. Gorum, Sora, Jurai, all of these are spoken in Orissa. Khasi is spoken, of course, in the Northeast. It's the only Austro-Asiatic language spoken in the Northeast, in Meghalaya. and Nicobarese on the Nicobar Islands. So Nicobar, the Andaman Nicobar Islands have Andaman and Nicobar. Andamanese is one language that's not related to the languages on the mainland, but Nicobarese is related to the Austro-Asiatic languages on the mainland and mainland Southeast Asia. So that's the Austro-Asiatic. So finally, we'll go over this Tibeto-Burman area. So Tibeto-Burman is a language family that is, as the name says, Tibetan and Burman, meaning spoken in Myanmar. They of course are related to those languages. Chinese is also Tibeto-Burman, the Chinese languages. So it's a huge language family. But in India, it's, as you can see, it's found mostly on the borderlands between China and India, China, Myanmar, and India. So mostly in the northeast there, and then also in Ladakh. But even though it's a small area, it's extremely diverse, and there's so many languages. Anybody who's been to the Northeast India probably, or studies in Northeast India, probably can tell you this. There's so many different languages, and we don't really know how many there are. We don't have much knowledge of this area, even though it's incredibly diverse linguistically. Arunachal Pradesh, for instance, is one place where there's hundreds of languages, and many of we still don't know. We still haven't documented them. So, I mean, this is just one example. I mean, this is from 2010. This is a linguistic group, US and with some Indian linguists, and they found a language a hidden language in Arunachal Pradesh, meaning, nobody knew about it, and even the speaker said it didn't exist. But then when they actually heard them speak, it was a completely different language from the neighboring languages. So this is there's a lot, especially in these areas where people don't have much of an idea still. Okay. So from languages to scripts. In India, unlike in many places in the world, languages are written in multiple scripts. So, if you go to many big areas, like say Europe, for instance, you have many different languages in Europe. Europe is also very linguistically diverse, but script-wise, it's very, static. It's like there's only Roman script and some places Cyrillic script, in the eastern part. Other than that, all the different languages are written in one script. If you go to China, it's the same. Linguistically very diverse, but more or less one script that they use. India's, different in that way. We have languages written in multiple scripts, and there are, different languages have different scripts. So there's been no systematic survey of script, unlike languages used in India, but some estimates are as high as 88 different scripts. Although that's just just a number I read somewhere. I don't know. I don't know how they've done a systematic survey or not of that. But if it's probably 88 or more scripts, it's probably making India one of the most graphically diverse countries in the world. So you can just see there's a map, and this map really, it shows you the different scripts, but it doesn't really get at it because it just shows you the official, script of the different states. So you have Gujarat, this on that side, and then in the middle you see all Devanagari until you get to Bengal, Orissa, then the script changes, but so Devanagari script is used more, and then down to Maharashtra, and then of course you have the South Indian scripts. up into Kashmir, and then to Pakistan, the Perso-Arabic script. So just as an exercise, if you all have a currency note with you nearby, you can take it out. It's just a way that you can sort of see the different scripts and languages. It's written on all currency notes. So you take it out, we'll have it out. Okay, it's nearby. So if you look at the front side of any currency note, of course, you have the Hindi in the Devanagari script and English in the Roman script. So these are the two languages, official languages or official scripts used by the government. On the back side, if you just start from the top to the bottom, you have Assamese, which is in the Eastern Brahmi script, and then Bengali in the Eastern Brahmi script. If you don't know these languages or these scripts, you might think they're pretty much the same. They are variants of the same script. So people say, oh, this is Bangla script. It's not exactly true. Or Assamese script, these are variants of one type of Brahmi or Nagari script with some minor changes in letters. So Assamese has some different letters than Bangla. The Gujarati is the Western Brahmi script or Western Nagari or Western Brahmi script. Then it's Kannada, that's the Kadamba script. Kashmiri in the Perso-Arabic script. Konkani is written in, of course, Devanagari. Malayalam is the Western Grantha. So the Grantha is the sort of South Indian Brahmi style, and Malayalam has a Western Grantha script. Marathi and Nepali, of course, are Devanagari. Okay, if you keep on continuing, it's Uriya in the Utkal script, Punjabi, which is the Gurumukhi script, Sanskrit in the Devanagari script, Tamil in the Eastern Grantha, Telugu, which is the Bhatti Prolu script, and then Urdu, which is the Perso-Arabic script. Now this script, the Urdu script, is not the same as the Arabic script. There's different styles of Arabic script. In the Arab countries, they write in Naqsh style, whereas in India, they write in a Nastaliq style. So it's a bit different. But it's the same variant. So as you can see, these scripts don't match onto language. Script has their own independent development, and it's kind of a misnomer to claim to put them together. Scripts have their own independent development, and there are specific reasons why currently we write the language we speak in a particular script. There's historical reasons for it, because we did use many scripts at one point, and in many languages they still do use many scripts. We'll go into that later on in the presentation. Okay, so a script is not a static thing. It's not something just way in the past. People made some scripts and then you just use it. New scripts are constantly being created. In fact, it's easier to make a script than to create a language. And most of the languages in India don't have written scripts. So the more literate people get, and people have gotten more literate in the past 100 years than in any time in the history of India. So they're making new scripts for their languages, right? These are scripts that are completely independent, new scripts. They don't have any relation to the scripts before. They might have some imported things, but so tribal languages, big tribal languages like Santali, Gondi, Ho, Mundari, Orang, other smaller tribal languages, they all have created scripts in the last, within the last 100 years or so, sometimes as early as like 50 years back, new scripts have been made. So, and more communities are making scripts. So this is an example of the Old Chiki script. there you can see this is Mamata Banerjee's picture there, because this is a official announcement in West Bengal. So West Bengal official announcements are not just in Bengali. So this is Jhargram. If any of you know IIT Kharagpur, it's the next big station over once you pass IIT Kharagpur. It's like a tribal dominated, Santali dominated area. So I was just there, and before I was getting on the train, I saw all these announcements. These are the COVID announcements, you know, take care, wash your hands, this and that. And this is, even though this is done in the Old Chiki script, which is a new script that's created for the Santali language. And even though most Santali speakers in West Bengal know how to read Bangla, they still put the announcement up in Old Chiki script and Santali language as well. This is probably because, you know, it can get people's attention easily if they see something written in their script. So that's just my guess there. People are making scripts on their own too. The village that I did field work in West Bengal, there was, you know, people who make their own scripts that they just circulate for their language. This is a Santali guy, tribal. He made his own script for his language and circulated among his friends and family and village. It didn't, unlike the old Chiki script, it didn't pick up traction. It didn't get recognized by the government, but, you know, people are making scripts. So you know, this is a very grassroots activity in very marginalized places. You find script development still happening. So this is a very interesting aspect of this graphic diversity. Okay. So we'll move on now. The official language of India, is it Hindi or English? That's of course a complicated question. India doesn't have a national language. It has 22 national languages, but it does have an official language. And, you know, probably when most people see, you know, things written in Hindi and English, they might think both are the official languages, but that's not exactly true. According to Article 343, the official language of the Union is Hindi, and this I'm taking from the Constitution, is Hindi in the Devanagari script. Now, why did they have to say in the Devanagari script? We'll get to that, because Hindi and the language, the precursors to Hindi, were not written only in the Devanagari script. So when you make something official, you have to standardize it. And to standardize, you have to give it one script, you know. And that's why Hindi in the Devanagari script is the official language of the Union, right? But the second part of that article says that notwithstanding anything in clause 1, for a period of 15 years from the commencement of this constitution, the English language shall continue to be used for all the official purposes of the Union, right? So English was supposed to be only used for 15 years after the Republic was founded. And then it should have been phased out and Hindi should have been the only official language. This was the intent, right? But as we know, we're speaking in English now, that intent didn't quite work out, right? So, well, why didn't it work out? Well, English has become by that point an Indian language. So I'll go into a little bit about the history of English here. English was the linguistic inheritance of British colonialism. I mean, that is very obvious. And as I showed you, it was originally intended to be phased out after 15 years, in place of Hindi. But, as many of you probably are familiar, especially you from South India, the imposition of Hindi caused riots and deaths. It was a big issue. And then now English is considered as a de facto official language for the entire country. So we at IIT Gandhinagar, of course, conduct our education in English. These are all results of certain policy decisions. Now, English has become Indian over time, meaning English, we cannot compare English that we speak to the English in other places. India is a multilingual country, and the English has multilingual influences all around it. Some of you might know this famous song, Why This Kolaveri Di. It's sort of entirely in English, but in like a Tamil English, you know? So maybe you wouldn't understand all the lyrics if you don't know Tamil, but it's not in Tamil, it's in English. Jab We Met is a famous movie. These are all code mixing, this is people speak English, they switch back and forth, they bring other languages in, local languages in that sense, English itself becomes a kind of Indian language, local language taking on the characteristics of the area. So here's some Indian Englishisms. So Indian English, of course, is a independent English language. I'm out of station. We can say, I belong to Delhi, is doing time pass, what is your good name? Such things. We have a lot. There's many, right? These are phrases that are taken from either Indian languages or from the particular history of English in India, from the way the British government was, or, people wrote it. These won't be understood in, say, other countries necessarily. And then every place has their own English. Singapore has its own English, Singlish, and all these other. So English itself is very localized all over. In India, you find English more in writing than you do in speaking. So if I go out to some place, I can see English written everywhere, even though people might not speak English much. And you get kind of funny English sometimes. If we're looking at it from like proper English point of view, it'll seem kind of strange. But, if you look at it from the fact that we live in a multilingual country, some of the aspects of the other language get put onto the aspects of English. So for instance, you have place for shoes keeping. Well, that's sort of a direct translation of that top part, right? Jute rakne gastan. They just sort of back translated it into the same way. So these things, and it doesn't really bother people. It's okay on signs, it's okay on everything. Here's just another sign. You can find hundreds of these signs. Just thank you for the inconvenience. Right? People kind of understand what it means. They don't really have to think about whether it's wrong or right, but it's still used. You see English in all different kinds of scripts. So this is an example. This is a bank and this bank is taken from a village in West Bengal. But if you went to Gandhinagar, you could find Punjab National Bank in Gandhinagar, you would find the same thing, but different script organization. So you have the English word Punjab National Bank, Punjab National Bank, Punjab National Bank, written in Roman script, Devanagari script, and this Eastern Brahmi or Bangla script. So you have English words kind of routinely written in different scripts. Even if you have it's the same word, it's the same 3 words written 3 times in different scripts, Why you need that, we can talk about. So if you get away from the bank, so we're still in the village, Jhilimili village, West Bengal. And here, by the way, no one is speaking English. If you get away from the bank, then you see that there's English everywhere too, but if you don't know the Bengali script, Eastern Brahmi script, you won't be able to read it. So, you go to the store, there's Ipil Electronics, there's Pelamoy Enterprise, there's Radha Damodar Telecom. So you have lots of English that's written there, even though this is not an English-speaking place. No one knows English there. So, you know, and you'll find this in every village in India, right? Or even town or wherever, right? So English has come into the lexicon, even when people don't speak it, into very remote places. So English is Indian, you know, despite people's lack of fluency. It's very much there. And it's in all the different scripts. And probably English is written maybe more in these Indian language scripts than in the Roman script, in this way, you know. So, okay, Hindi. If we talk about Hindi, the other sort of official language, you can go through the history of it a little bit and show how it also is very diverse. So Hindi originated from Khari Boli, which is the language of northern central India, sort of around the Delhi area. You know, the different various languages, dialects spoken there. It sort of originated in the late Mughal times, and at that time it was, you know, known as generally as Hindustani, because the Mughal Empire was Hindustan. And it was written in 3 major scripts. Mostly it was written in the Perso-Arabic script because that was the script used to write Persian, which is the language of the Mughal Empire. So they adapted it to the Hindustani language. But then it was also written in, you know, the sort of smaller but dispersed scripts, Devanagari and Kaiti. Eventually Kaiti falls out and we're left with Perso-Arabic and Devanagari. Since this language was sort of used as a lingua franca by the Mughal army contingents, and they go to like different places and come from different areas. So it's kind of like a mixed language that the people speak in different areas. And so it was, you know, people called it the like a Lashkari Zaban, Zaban-e-Lashkar, the army language, or it was also called Urdu. Urdu comes from the Turkish word for army, or like cantonment language or something like this. So that's where we get the name Urdu from. So that's how like this Hindustani language got a name called Urdu. So then what happened? Well, during the colonial period, we have native elites who split, you know, the Hindustani language in 2, and this really divided along the lines of script because the language was very similar, pretty much the same. So this really divided along the lines of script. We have Hindustani written in the Devanagari script would be known as Hindi, and Hindustani in the Perso-Arabic script would be known as Urdu. So you have the same language written in 2 different scripts, and then, you know, the languages start changing a bit after they are considered separate languages. And that's why in the Constitution, it's really clearly written Hindi in the Devanagari script. So during the time of the partition, Hindi in the Devanagari script was proposed as the official language of India, and Urdu was of Pakistan. And these languages mainly became, in the high registers, a difference of which preference for Persian or Sanskrit origin words. Okay. As you can see here, I just wrote the same thing. The top, maybe you call it Urdu. The second one, maybe you call it Hindi. It's the exact same thing, exact same phrasing, everything. Right? So, because linguistically, it's pretty much the same language, except for in the literary registers. The language we speak here and that we call Hindi is pretty much a very mixed language. Also, there's Sanskrit origin, Persian origin, and English words mixed in. None of them are foreign. They're all kind of part of our everyday speech. Sometimes the Persian origin words sound more authentic or more in use. The English words may be more habitual for us. And in some cases, the Sanskrit origin words are the more common words. So it's really mixed. You can't tell what is, there is no origin there. So bhet, mulakat, meeting, purush, admi, man, mahila, aurat, woman, manush, insan, human, prem, mohabbat, love, bal, zul, fair, samachar, khabar, news. These all are commonly used words, some more than others, some have different connotations. So when we talk about Urdu, it's 50 million speakers in India. Okay, so right now we're talking about what is considered Urdu, right? That has 50 million speakers in India, only 10 million in Pakistan. So, and as you can see, in Pakistan, it's really only spoken on the border areas of India, and many people don't identify as Urdu first language speakers anyway. In India, we see a big spread of who identify as first language Urdu speakers. In northern India, down into the Bihar on the Nepal border is one big concentration, and the second big concentration is in South India, actually. So, especially in Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka, this is the Dakkani Urdu that's spoken. And that has its own flavor, like a mix of the Hindustani and the South Indian languages. So Urdu and Hindi are the official languages of some states. So you have Uttar Pradesh, for instance. There's just a railway sign that has it in the Devanagari script, the Persio-Arabic script. It's pronounced exactly the same. It's the same, very similar language. Of course, script is different. But because they're seen as different languages, they become two different official languages, according to the state government. So you find Urdu in many states in West Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh. You find that Urdu is a second official language. Right? So the official government documents and newspapers prefer more Sanskrit vocabulary. So Sanskritized vocabulary you'll hear in speeches, news reports, these kind of things. And then the popular culture, such as Bollywood, Bollywood, especially film, music, prefer the more kind of Persianized vocabulary, especially in songs. So sometimes they just take directly from Persian and they call it, you might say something like Salam-e-Ishq, you might think this is Urdu. It's not Urdu, actually, it's Persian. But it sounds Urdu because Urdu has imported a lot of Persian. Because in Urdu it would be just like Ishq Salam, I guess, just like in Hindi, But in Persian it's Salam Ishq. So Persian is still there in India in this way, not as a spoken language, but in this, these kind of registers, we still are engaging with Persian language. Through our engagement with Hindi. So Hindi, as you can see, the spread is mostly in the states we consider the Hindi belt. So this is the Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, classic Hindi belt states, Bihar, right? This is like very thick concentration of Hindi speakers. Outside, we see it get less and less and less, until you get down to south like Tamil Nadu and stuff, and you see very little, almost nil. Same as you go sort of east. But I mean, Hindi itself doesn't really cover. It's not the local language of these places. It's the official language, and people might identify as native speakers of Hindi, but actually when you hear them speak, as you probably all know, it's, what they did was they grouped a number of different distinct languages under the name Hindi to kind of make it, to make this grouping of Hindi as the official language. The most famous, of course, is Bhojpuri, Undari, Maghi, Haryanvi, Marwari, Mewari, and many of you might speak these languages, like Bari, Kumaoni. Garhwali. So there's lots of these Indo-European languages that were previously grouped as like dialects of Hindi, you know, but are pretty distinct from each other. If you go to like, you're looking at Rajasthan, like Marwari, Mewari, and you're going to Jharkhand and Nagpuri, these are very different, and their Hindi is different too, but as you know, Bhojpuri, for instance, has like is the most prominent of this. And so what has happened recently is that these dialects, which were previously sort of, seen as Hindi, now have their own identity. Bhojpuri is one of the biggest movies, cinema languages now so, Bhojpuri has its own independent identity, it has its own channels and everything. And now other of these, so-called dialects are now making their own cinema as well. So it's very diverse. When we say Hindi belt, all of these things, we're talking about a huge region, linguistically diverse region. Okay, so just to sort of end here, we could talk about the language of our area. The area of IIT Gandhinagar, Gujarati. That's the Gujarati, Western Brahmi or Gujarati script. So just to take another language and analyze it. So Gujarati, we think of Gujarat and equate it with Gujarati. So Gujarat, just like many places in India, is not monolithic. Gujarati is not the only language spoken here natively. It is what we call Gujarati is actually spoken in the central part. So from Patan or Banaskanta down to Surat, Navsari area. This is all Gujarati, although the Surti Gujarati is going to be very different than the Ahmedabad Gujarati, but it's sort of grouped in a similar sort of language grouping Gujarati. Once you get to the eastern part of the state, it's Bhili, the tribal languages. I did some research work over there. And these are very diverse languages. Some of them are closer to Marathi, some of them are closer to Rajasthani, but they're very different than standard Gujarati. And that's spoken from the eastern part of this Banaskanta district all the way down to Dahod, Narmada, Surat, all the way. That's the tribal belt, Dangs district. These are all the tribal belts, and these are all the different Bhili languages. Kutch is spoken Kutchi, which is closer to Sindhi than Gujarati. Sindhi is what they speak across the border in Pakistan. So there's a shared border there. So Kutchi is more like Sindhi related than Gujarati related. And then in the peninsula there, Kathiawad Peninsula, so this is the Bhavnagar, Amreli, Junagadh districts. You have Saurashtra. So these are, Saurashtra is, it's related to Gujarati, of course, and in the cities and everything, you'll probably hear a lot of standard Gujarati. But once you go in the interiors of those areas, you hear languages that are pretty different than the standard Gujarati and sometimes hard to understand. And they also have their regional pride and things related to their language. So Gujarat is a very diverse place. So Gujarati, what we call Gujarati, is not really what's spoken everywhere. Gujarati was also written in different scripts. And then these scripts sort of fell out. And if you look at any language in India, you will see, as we talked about with Hindi, you'll see that there were many scripts at one point being written in these languages, and they fell out for different reasons. So in Gujarati, for instance, in Bombay, which was at that time Gujarat and Maharashtra, this is in 1900. So at that time, Gujarat and Maharashtra were all one in the Bombay state. So in the Bombay area, Gujarati was being written in the Devanagari script, right? But and in sort of where we are, Ahmedabad area, it was written in this Gujarati script. But after this Gujarat Maharashtra separation and these problems and stuff, this Devanagari script Gujarati fell out of use, right? So he took this sample and just put it there in the Bombay dialect of Gujarati. Bombay has its own dialect of Gujarati. Gujarati is still written in the Perso-Arabic script, as are many languages. Tamil, for instance, is still written in the Perso-Arabic script also. Many languages are written in Perso-Arabic script. So Gujarati is written in the Perso-Arabic script by the Gujarati-speaking Muslim communities here. There's a Dawoodi Bohra community. They have their own variety of Gujarati, Lisan al-Dawat, which they use in their community. It's Gujarati, but it has some more Persian Arabic words. They have two varieties of that. It's the standard Gujarati one and the Kutchi one. Both they write in the Perso-Arabic script. So if you go, you'll see the Perso-Arabic script, but the language will be Gujarati. You probably know that Gujarati has been spoken in many countries around the world. It's not just a local language here, right? So for instance, in USA, Gujarati is spoken. In the state of New Jersey, for instance, it's the third most spoken language after Tamil and, not Tamil, after English and Spanish. So, the state of New Jersey, it's English, Spanish, and then Gujarati. So it's, very widely spoken in some places, some areas. Canada has 24-hour Gujarati stations. UK, you'll find a lot, but, a lot of Gujaratis are spoken in Africa. For instance, Zanzibar is the second most spoken language after Swahili. And non-African people there understand and speak Gujarati. I met some people from there. So Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and then in the Asian countries and Middle East countries, of course, many Indians are there, so Gujarati is spoken there as well. Even when I lived in Japan, I met many Gujaratis also doing their business. So when you go out globally, you see the different variations of language and script. So we go back to our bank of choice in the presentation here, Punjab National Bank. So Punjab National Bank, this is a Punjab National Bank branch in Leicester in England. So here, unlike say, if you went to the Punjab Bank in Gandhinagar, you would see it in Roman script, Devanagari script, and Gujarati script, right, in Gandhinagar. But in England, you just see it in the Roman script and the Gujarati script, the Western Brahmi script. So this is because there's no official language or script in England, except for English and Roman script. So they just put the language, the one that most of the people there read, which is the Gujarati script. In that community, Leicester is mostly Gujarati. So, so you have the different kind of variations depending on this place, and this idea of this global kind of language. Okay, so I will wrap up now. Just to sort of summarize, the linguistic landscape of India is incredibly diverse, both linguistically and graphically. Questions of language have been very much part of the founding of the country, and language is intricately linked with politics, territory, and social identity. For instance, probably many of you either consider your ethnicity as related to your language, especially if you're from a non-Hindi belt speaking area, like from Gujarat or Bengal, Tamil Nadu, you might think of your ethnicity as very much tied to your language. There's the idea of mother tongue, which is linked to where you're from. Language, of course, is very political. The linguistic realities defy the realities, if we do empirical study, which I've tried to present here, defy the common assumptions like Hindi is for India, Urdu is for Pakistan, or Gujarati is for Gujarat, right? I mean, we see that it's much more diverse than that. There are more Urdu speakers in India, right? You know, Hindi is a very internally diverse kind of thing. And Gujarat itself, you know, it's not just Gujarati. Also, one conclusion I would like to just suggest here is that the supposed global languages, like English, we think English is a global language, but they can be local. English in India, I argue, is actually, I mean, fine, there is a global version of English, but English is also very localized in India. And then supposed languages we think are local, like Gujarati, for instance, you know, like if we're here in Gandhinagar, we might feel like Gujarati is a local language, right? Spoken in the villages like Palaj and Lasan, and these are for Gujarati. But Gujarati is a global. We see Gujarati script on the signboards in Leicester, UK. So these distinctions are kind of also not so clear, right? More complicated. Right. And just some relevant books you might be able to look at the library if you're more interested in these subjects are, you know, so I have a book, it's in the library on the tribal literature, looking at the tribal languages of Gujarat. Then many volumes of the People's Linguistic Survey of India, the grassroots survey I was talking about at the beginning of the presentation. Many volumes are available in our library, so they'll list all the languages and samples and who speaks them. You can find books about Hindi and the history of Hindi and Urdu, just Gujarati diaspora, multilingualism. The maps I took were from this language atlas of South Asia, which is there in our library too. So these are just some books that you might be interested in for reference purposes. Okay, thank you very much.